When it comes to help desk, time is your friend, or at least it should be. And one way to make time your friend is through basic forms of automation. And scripting is really important because it can take care of repetitive tasks, etc. To tell us more about the essentials of scripting, I've brought in Juan Fernandez. Juan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, James. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. Tell us a bit about yourself, and let's start talking about the essentials of scripting.
Yep, 28-year veteran in IT. Started off at the help desk, tier one, tier two, tier three, tier four, manager, supervisor, business owner, IT, MSP builder. Been through it all. So hopefully I can share today.
It's good to have you here. When it comes to scripting, I think it can be a bit intimidating to folks, but really it's kind of applying commands, that type of thinking, right into a file that you can run later. Is that fair enough to say?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's the lifeblood of the help desk.
I think so. So, what are some of the scripts that you've? Let's start with what are some of the tasks that you automate?
Well, I mean, there's a numerous amount of different tasks that we can automate, but I think some of the favorites that may be out there in the ecosystem today are, mapping a drive, or, potentially adding a new user, or even things such as resetting systems, processes, for those that may hang, or installing a printer. There's a numerous amount of automation that we can find there.
I've seen people, they kind of carry around with them, as it were, various scripts that will clear
Mhm.
cache. Or like you mentioned, like if you're installing a printer, you bring things back to bare bones. A script that will say, "Okay, strip everything out of there, and that way we can start over fresh." Things like that, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, so when you're doing some form of automation, whether it be, let's say, in a Windows system or a Linux or a Mac system, these applications don't have to be all that complex, do they? When I say applications, the text file, right, the batch file, it doesn't necessarily have to be all that complex, does it?
No, I mean, you can get away with just a couple characters and do, things such as, add or delete or remove, or, add things in. The characters are very small, right? It's just putting a string of commands together that will actually run some sort of subsystem or control process that actually enacts a change on that system.
I think it could be, yeah, kind of confusing or at least intimidating to folks because they're like, well, geez, you guys are talking about programming. But really, if you just get choose the right kind of environment that you're in, let's say you're in a Windows system, so you create a batch file for that. Or if you're in a Linux system, you're using, you're using Bash, so you
Mhm.
create a Bash script. And then you basically just start listing the types of commands that you want.
Absolutely. And I think that for some, and even those that are in Windows, if you aren't aware, I mean, we function in a GUI based system. If you ever right click on one and maybe go to properties, you can actually see that they are just scripts behind there with a pretty little icon on the front of them. So it's not that you're creating anything new. And if you're looking for things to do and maybe look at ways to formulate some of those, you can use those for instances.
That's right. And plus, Google is your friend. Besides any sort of resources that would CompTIA, there's all sorts of information to get started about the various languages that you could end up using. For example, in Windows, you'll be using, let's say, PowerShell or simple batch files. In Linux, you might be using, shell scripting, Bash and things like that. I suppose some people might use Python or something if they get really involved in something.
Yeah. Yeah. Java, C++, right? It just depends.
The heavy duty stuff, yeah.
The heavy duty stuff.
But I think when it comes to scripting, the whole idea is what are some of the repetitive tasks, and then what are some shell scripts, basically using Notepad that I can put together to kind of
Mhm.
automate some of those things.
Yeah, and I think that to that point, resetting processes is a big one, right? I see that often where, they want a process to even start, or they're creating a task where, I want to run a task on a scheduled date, and I'll run it, you kick off a backup or something along those lines, or transmit data, or copy a directory from one to another, or sync time. There's a numerous amount of different types of scripts that can be run, and I think it's good to test those too, and use them and try them and test them, make sure that they work, and have fun with it.
that's really cool because you basically think of all the things that Juan has mentioned. You could get all of those going in your quiver, as it were, and have them ready to go next time you need to troubleshoot something. So
I
thanks,
agree.
Juan. All right.
Thanks so much, James.
You bet, man. Have a good one.
You too.